Alright guys, so I want to talk today about something called production functions, or we're going to deal with basically, as you saw in class, a chart where we talk about suppliers and how they produce. Last unit we talked about supply and demand, and now I want to talk a little more about how producers choose to produce in terms of how many workers they might hire, how much of a product they make, what are their costs, their revenue, and those types of things, because we need to have a basic understanding of that to understand how suppliers are going to produce. And so, like I had mentioned in class as well, we are going to be dealing in a certain time frame in these situations called the short run. Now we have the short run and the long run, and we'll talk about both of those in more detail later on in this course. But when we talk about the short run, what we're dealing with is a time period where we have a fixed resource. Normally, like our capital, actually, we're going to say all really resources are fixed except one variable. And for us, we're going to say that our variable is labor. And what we mean by that is, if you think about our capital like a factory or machinery, I can't necessarily go and build a factory overnight. And so there's going to be a period of time where that capital is fixed. Maybe I don't have the funds right away to build a whole new factory or get a loan, whatever. But to hire another worker, I'm able to do that pretty quickly. And so we're going to say our workers, when we put this in a chart, maybe our variable. We would see that we would increase the number of workers as we go. We might go from 0 workers to 1 to 2 to 3. And for us, we're going to work our way all the way up to 13 and take a look at what that looks like on a chart. See, why do we hire workers? Well, we hire workers in order to make stuff for us. And so that's what we're going to deal with. It's what we call our total product. This is the total amount of a product we can produce at any given number of workers. And so obviously if we have 0 workers working for us, we can't make any product because no one's there to make it. Now, as you see, as we add more workers, we're able to produce more and more. With 1 worker we can produce 8, with 2 workers we can produce 21, with 3 workers we can produce 40, and we see that continue on. Now what you might notice is a little section down here where actually that we find that our total product is decreasing, and we'll address that here on the next slide. Because what actually might be more important for us to understand than total product is what we call our marginal product. Because our marginal product is the extra or additional output we get whenever we add one more variable input. So what it's going to be is our change in our total product when we add one more worker. Because if we go from 0 workers up to 1 worker, we add 8 product. So we'd say our marginal product is going to be 8 because we add 8 product by hiring 1 more worker. Now when we add when we add 1 more unit of variable input, say we jump from 1 worker to 2 workers, we saw our total product go from 8 to 21. But we want to know, what is the change in total product? What did we gain by adding that 1 more worker? Well, we gained 13 units of the product. Same thing goes from going from 2 workers to 3 workers. Our total product jumped from 21 to 40. So when we add 1 more variable input, so 1 more worker going from 2 to 3, what is our change in total product? Well, there it's 19. And so what you guys see as we go, we have our marginal product, which is again our additional product as we go. But what you might notice is there's 3 distinct sections of this. We have this first section, what we call increasing marginal returns. And if you see that in this period of time up to our 5th worker, what we see is that for each worker that we add more product than the one before, because our first worker adds 8, but our second one adds 13. Our third worker adds 19 product. Our fourth worker adds 25 product. And so as we go, we're having increasing returns, which means adding another worker is producing more than the one before. But then after a while, what we find is we actually have something called decreasing marginal returns, which means that our workers are still contributing to us, but what we find is that they're not contributing as much as the one before. And so you can see our 5th worker, is adding 20, 6 is adding 16, 13. So they're still contributing additional product, but just not as much as the person before. Now, why might this be? Well, say we're baking cakes or something. Our kitchen is only so big, and so when we have that first worker, maybe in the day the worker can bake 8 cakes. Sorry, here, the total product. Now, whenever we add that second worker, we can make 21, which seems to add a lot more marginal product, which is true because maybe those 2 workers together can kind of form an assembly line and be more efficient. And we see that that's true all the way up through our 4th worker. Now, when we add our 5th worker, what we might find is maybe we're running out of room in the kitchen or running out of things for the workers to do. And so they still contribute, but not nearly as much as they would before. But we actually get to this point way at the bottom that we call negative marginal returns, which means that each additional worker actually causes less to be produced. The way I like to think of this is what we call like too many cooks in the kitchen. It's this idea that they're kind of just bumping into each other as they're running around, and they're actually causing us to be less productive. Maybe they're getting in the way, or they're just not able to contribute in any way. And it's actually detrimental to the company. And so we see these three distinct sections in marginal product. Obviously, with production, we have costs that come along with it. And I want to talk first about our fixed costs. Sometimes you might hear this called overhead. Now, fixed costs are costs that are going to stay the same no matter what. For example, if we have a kitchen that we're baking our cakes in, it doesn't matter if I'm making 8 cakes or if I'm making 130 cakes. I still have to pay my rent for that kitchen. And so no matter what, fixed costs are going to stay the same. And again, this is something on a quiz that you might see that I would give to you. But something like rent for a building or salary or taxes, something that wouldn't change in like our cost for that wouldn't change whenever we add more product. Again, this is sometimes referred to as overhead. But we do have costs that change over time. We call those variable costs. For example, as we add more workers, we have to pay our workers their wages, and so we'd have to pay more for each worker that we add. That first worker we might have to pay $30 total, and then that second worker we'd have to pay another $30 for that second worker on top of that for the first worker, and we can see that true all the way down. And so variable costs are costs that change as our output changes. Obviously, we're hiring more workers, and if we, we're just kind of dealing with the basic here, but if we were to go into more details, we would say that the amount of land or those resources we're using to go into our product, that's also going to change our variable costs. But we're just going to deal with a set fixed number of 30 for our variable costs. So we see as our number of workers go up, our variable costs is changing, our costs that change along with our output. And so again, like we said, this might be our workers, but this might also be resources to make the product, like the flour to make the cake or the frosting. We have something called total costs, which this one's really easy to find. All we do is use this formula of fixed costs plus variable costs, and so we just add straight across. What we find is 75 plus 0 is 75, 75 plus 30 is 105, and we just continue to do that all the way down. And we'll see that our total costs are increasing as well because we're making more product, we're hiring more workers, and so our costs are increasing. So that kind of does it for our costs, but there's another thing we need to find when it comes to our costs, and it's something called marginal costs. And we do kind of put this into our revenue category, as you can see, but we need to understand our marginal cost because our marginal cost tells us how much more does it cost to make one more product, just one. And so what we would do to find this is we would take our change in total cost and divide it by our marginal product. So here's what this would look like. Obviously with zero product, zero workers, we're not going to deal with anything there. But what we would say is our marginal cost at our first worker is $375. Now why is it $375? Well, what we need to find is first our change in total cost. So when we went from 0 workers to 1 worker, our change in cost went from 75 to 105, which means our change in cost was $30. So we're spending $30 more. Now when we spend those $30 more, what do we get out of that? Well, we get our marginal product. We get 8 more product. And so what we would do is we would take that 30 additional dollars we spent, divide it by the 8 products we got out of it, and we find that each one of those 8 products costs us $3.75. And again, that's true for our next one as well. Going from 105 to 135, we spent an additional $30. And by spending those additional $30, remember that second worker got us a little more product. They got us 13. So we would take that additional 30, that change in total cost of 30, divided by our marginal product of 13, and gets us $2.31. And so if we just went ahead and solved that all the way out for each of these, we would find that we see our marginal cost decrease but then increase again. And the reason it's starting to increase again is because if you remember, we saw that idea of decreasing marginal returns. And so what we find is that our $30 that we're adding each time is getting us more initially, but then it's starting to get us less and less, which causes our marginal cost to go up. Now obviously for this one where we have negative marginal product, we're just going to leave that blank over here because technically if you plug the math in, it would come out to a negative marginal cost. We're not even going to mess with that. So that tells us our marginal cost. Another thing we need to make sure we are aware of is our marginal or our average revenue. Now our marginal revenue, remember this word marginal means additional. So additional revenue that we get for selling one more unit. And so what we need to know for that is obviously how much did we sell it for? Because our marginal revenue equals how much are we selling just that one product for. Now for us, we're going to keep it constant through here. That's not necessarily realistic for a business. They would change their price, based on how much they're producing. But we're going to say we're charging a fixed amount. So that each unit that we sell, we're going to say our marginal revenue is the exact same. And we're going to say it's $6. For every single one we sell, it's $6. Now, in our case as well, our marginal revenue is equal to our average revenue. Typically, that wouldn't always be the case for a business, but for us, it's going to be, just because since we're charging $6 every single time, if you take the average of all those sixes for each one we sell, it's going to be $6. Because we need to understand marginal revenue, but average revenue actually comes into play in this next one, because we need to solve for our total revenue as well. Our total revenue is the amount of cash sales we have, how much is going into the cash register at night. So an easy way to find this is we take our average revenue and multiply it by our total product, because our average revenue tells us, okay, on average, how much are you selling a single product for? And we're selling it for $6. So that's what that means is, for each product that we sell to someone, we are receiving $6 for it. Now, if we're selling each individual one for $6, but our total product is 8, so we're selling 8 products at $6 a piece, that's going to be $48. It's our average revenue right here, multiplied by our total product. And so again, if we did $6 times 21 products that we're selling, we sold each one of those for $6. 6 times 21 is $126. So we would just do that same multiplication all the way through, taking our average revenue and multiplying it out by our total product. Now, sometimes what people are tempted to do is look at our total revenue here and they say, okay, well, where would we want to produce? Well, down here, 798. That's awesome. That's where we have our highest revenue. So we would want to produce when we have 10 workers. But we need to be very careful. We can't make assumptions like that, because what's kind of more important to businesses than total revenue is their profits, because profit is what they actually get to go home with after they pay all the bills. Because what we look at is that total revenue doesn't factor in our costs. This is just how much money is going in the register before we pay our bills. So we take a look at our total profit, and to find our profit, all we do is take that total revenue, what we made total from each product, and then subtract our total cost. So obviously right here with 0 workers, we aren't making any revenue, but we have $75 in costs, and so our profit's actually negative $75. And so we're technically losing money. We're in the red there. Again, total revenue here, 48 minus our total cost of 105. That's still going to yield us a negative amount, negative $57. And if we keep solving for our profits all the way out, we see that number kind of start to increase for a while and then decrease again. Again, that has to do with our total costs increasing, but having those decreasing and those negative returns as well. And so that our profits again show us how much money we get to go home with at the end of the night. Now, if you guys remember from last time we talked about producer surplus, that's basically what this is. Producer surplus is the additional benefit that producers get from selling at a price that's higher than what it costs them. And that's exactly what we're saying here. And so there's 2 points I want us to look at when we deal with this chart. First of all is what we call our break-even point. And our break-even point is right here. Why is it right there? Well, that's the point where we cross from a negative profit into a positive profit. That's wherever our profits are positive, where our total revenue is actually finally equal to and then exceeds our total costs. So we go from -9 to 75 right here. Now we also have this point, which is our profit maximizing point, and this is wherever our marginal cost is equal to our marginal revenue, and that's wherever we will maximize our profit. Now if you're looking at this, what you might see is, you might say, hey, there's no point here where our marginal cost is actually equal to our marginal revenue, and you're absolutely right. But what we find here is that at this point of 9 workers, it costs us $5 to make each product. That's what our marginal cost shows us. How much more did it cost us to make a single product? But our average revenue is $6. And so right here at this point, it costs us $5, but we're getting $6 out of it. Now, once we start producing those next 4 products, what we actually find is that it's costing us $7.50 to make, but we only get $6 for each of those. And so we're actually losing $1.50 on each product. And that's, we don't want that, because we actually see that negative $6 reflected right here as our profits drop $6. And so we would maximize our profit right here when we get as close to our marginal revenue or average revenue as possible without going over. And so that would be what we call our profit maximizing point. And you can see our total profit is higher than any other point along here. Now just a few numbers I want us to take a look at. And these are really simple to solve for, and so I'm just going to run through them quick. One is our average fixed costs. Remember, our average fixed cost is just taking our fixed cost divided by our total product. And what that's telling us is on average how much of your fixed cost is going toward each one unit. And so right here, when our fixed costs are $75, we're making 8 products. On average, how much of that $75 is going toward each one of those 8? Well, $9.38. Because if you took that $9.38 and multiplied it by the 8 total product, you would get our total fixed cost of 75. And we just do that all the way through, where we take our total fixed cost, which again is constant throughout, divided by our total product to get us our average fixed costs. Then we also have our average variable costs, and our average variable cost is the same thing. It's just taking our variable costs and saying on average how much this variable cost goes into each one of those total product. So you would take 30 divided out by 8. We would say $3.75 of our variable costs at this point are going toward each one of those products. Same thing right here. When we take variable cost of 60 divided by 21, we would say, okay, we have $60 in variable costs, and of that $60, how much is going toward each one of our 21 products? Well, $2.86. And again, we just do that division all the way out. And then finally, we have our average total costs. And our average total cost represents the total costs that we have. So taking our total cost and dividing it by our total product. And so we would say, okay, we spent $105 total here to make 8 products. So on average, how much did each one of those cost us? Well, on average, it cost us $13.13. Same thing here. We spent a total of $135. We made 21 products. 135 divided 21 is $6.43. And so you can solve that by doing total cost divided by total product, but also if you want to check your answer, you can just add these straight across and say, okay, our average fixed cost is $938 plus an average variable cost of $375 equals $1313. And so our average total cost, you can see it reflected right there. So it is important that you guys are able to find and solve for all of these. Make sure you're aware of these formulas. Make sure you know what you're doing with these formulas. You had that practice one in class. Make sure you're working through that. The answer key is posted here on the website as well. So take a look at that. Make sure you're working through this and that you're aware of how to do all of these processes.